Hi, I hope you're all smashing. Welcome to the WriteMentor panel, working as a neurodivergent author. My name is Emily Randall. I'm one of the events coordinators at WriteMentor, and I'm also a middle grade author with my book coming out sometime next year. And I'm going to introduce my wonderful panelists in a moment. I do just want to give a bit of context about why this panel came about. I did mention it in a previous recording, so if you've already heard this, I do apologise. I basically had a bit of a light bulb moment about 2 or 3 years ago. And when I realised that a lot of things that I had been experiencing and the way my brain worked over the past 35, 36 years had probably been down to ADHD. There were a lot of questions that were suddenly answered for me. And so I set about seeking a diagnosis, which is still ongoing because NHS, amazing. But I'm hoping that it is going to happen very soon. But a lot of questions that came out for me was how it would align with my career as a writer. Because so much of what I considered how my brain worked is informed my writing. And so I wanted to speak to working authors who are neurodivergent about their life and their career and see what they had to say. So hi guys, hello. Hi, I'd like to introduce Louise Gooding, first of all. Louise is a British children's author living in Switzerland. She has a keen interest in sharing stories that feature characters that stand out, are different, and who have something to say, and within her family. She took up writing to find a way of discussing neurological and physical diversity and how to explore other sensitive issues within children's books. Her first book, Just Like Me, came out in 2021. Is that right? Mubs, thank you.
That's when this one came out.
Oh, it's beautiful. Look at it. It's a lovely cover. And Abigail Balfe, hello to you as well. Abigail is a Brighton-based writer and illustrator. Her debut middle grade children's book, A Different Sort of Normal, was published by Puffin Penguin Random House in 2021 and was shortlisted for the Non-Fiction Children's Book of the Year at the British Book Awards. Congratulations. She creates stories... She creates stories based on her own life experiences and a desire to help children of various ages through different situations and emotions. Her projects often reflect underrepresented themes, including family addiction, spirituality, and autism. Hi guys, welcome. That was a bit of a long-winded introduction there. How are you? Yeah, you both well?
Yeah, great. Thank you. It was a perfect introduction. Yes.
Oh, marvellous. Yes. I am glad. Lovely. Well, I'll jump straight in. We've had a bit of a bio, but Louise, first of all, could you tell us a bit about yourself and your writing career, please?
I discovered I had ADHD a bit like you're doing now, Emily, like a bit later in life. Really joined up the dots for me, what was going on with my head and my brain, and it was basically through helping my own children who were going through their own diagnosis, where actually one of their psychologist said to me, "Have you considered Mrs. Gooding?" I was like, okay, am I that obvious? Apparently I was that obvious. But it was just, for me, I started writing alongside my diagnosis because I wanted to find a way to really understand that and express this to my children. What did it mean? What was it? What did it encompass? And I found a lot of the time, and I don't know if I'm sure you'll relate to this, that when we looked at ADHD representation, especially in books, I was getting told like Horrible Henry, or I'm like, no, but the stereotypes of what would a child with ADHD represent, or an autistic child. How do they present, and as you've seen through history, it's not been the best presentation that we've had, and I kind of wanted to challenge that. I was like, no, I don't want to share these stories with my kids. I don't want this to be what they have in their bookshelves to say, oh, then maybe I can find myself in there. And as they say, the good old saying is, if you don't like something, do something about it. So that's why I took up writing, and I was really lucky that when I came up with Just Like Me, that I sent it to Madeline Milburn, and Chloe picked it up and was like, yes, I can see so much potential with this. So I was really lucky. That's how I started off, really. Just inspired to change.
Love it. That's so nice that the two were kind of intertwined. Entwined, that's the right word. That kind of one informed the other. That's really lovely. Thank you. And Abigail, how about you?
I suppose it's kind of similar in that I was diagnosed as autistic about 3.5 years ago, while I was 33 and I was studying for an MA in children's book illustration at the time. And I got the diagnosis, I think, in the third year when we were starting on our final project. And I was kind of just doing bits in my sketchbook, like thinking of memories from childhood and like writing down things. And because we had to keep a sketchbook as like a day-to-day thing in the MA. And as the sketchbook kind of filled up, I suddenly thought, maybe this could turn into a book that would actually help people who are growing up feeling different and don't know why. Because I was learning at the time as well, like, because I had no idea I was autistic, even though, because of the stereotypes and just lots of misinformation. And where am I? Oh yeah, and also a few weeks ago I was diagnosed with ADHD.
Okay.
And so I didn't realize that a different sort of normal wasn't just a story about growing up autistic. It's a story about growing up autistic with ADHD.
Wow.
And but I don't know if I have an end to my story, but that's
doesn't matter.
That's in keeping with my brain.
I recognize this.
But I have a what do I have? I've got a fiction book coming out next year, which also features ND characters, and a picture book the year after, which is also autism based. So just trying to get more.
That's totally.
Yeah.
It's so nice.
Words.
It's so nice to see that that you guys are putting that stuff out there, and and I think there's this thing, isn't there, about being diagnosed as an adult. You know what it's like to be a kid and not know why you feel different. It's almost like everyone else has received some kind of instruction manual that you have not got, and you're like, why is this? Why does everyone know what they're doing? And so it's really, I think it's a kind of unique perspective to be writing from, for those kids who don't necessarily know.
And I think it's interesting.
Sorry, Louise, go on.
And I think it's interesting, as you're saying, because Abigail, you're saying that why didn't you not know? And it's also because autism for years was like something for boys, and it's not. It's ADHD, something for boys, because all of the diagnosis is still based on the typical male, which is really, really annoying. So ADHD as well is a big one, because I look at myself and I compare myself to the boys who were probably getting support. I was just seen as a rowdy girl. I was literally, presenting stereotypically as a boy. I was the class clown. I was doing, I was just constantly in everybody's face. And, it's so difficult to think like, well, why were the boys getting the help? Why was it never picked up? Why was I just seen as annoying or difficult? And this is, and I love the fact you're doing some picture books and some other things, Abigail. I've got some books coming out, as Emily knows, next year. And I'm sticking with neurodiversity, but there's so much more I want to challenge. And as you say, even when it just comes down to just gender stereotypes of like, I was a girl who wanted to join Scouts. I was a girl that wanted to play rugby just because I was told I couldn't. So that was my annoying defiance of, I'm going to do it just because I can, which that was, people found that were difficult to handle. But it was fine being a feisty girl, and it was fine doing that, and it's still nowadays like we do get going off track a bit, but even girls now, when they have a voice, when they're loud, when they say what they want, it's still today something beyond neurodiversity that is still challenged. Girls, if they're not sat quietly, if they're too loud in class, if they're too assertive in class, if they're too boisterous, they still get pigeonholed and still get put in a box of, well, that's not how we expect girls to act. So I'm very much in all of my stuff. I was really lucky for the book that's coming out next year. I was like, please don't put the girl in a dress. I wear dungarees. My kids wear dungarees. Let's think outside the box. And no pink, please, no pink. And and I was like, I want that. I want that going forward. I want that to make sure that it's not just maybe the neurodiversity, but being a loud, boisterous. Sorry, I don't think of another word for it, but a boisterous girl is something I really want to allow these girls a space to feel that they can be, and not be put in a box and told you're naughty because of it, or not be put in a box and say, oh, she's too much because of it. These are the girls that could change the world if you let them have these voices. So yeah, there's two sides for me.
No, that's really, really lovely.
It's so important.
I had a conversation with a primary school teacher friend of mine who said, because my daughter is very much very similar to you, I think, from what you said, Louise, and she's very confident. And the primary school teacher said, with girls particularly, she can see it that you get, that primary school sometimes, if not done the right way, can shut these girls down because they're told, very quickly, you're bossy, you're this, you're that, and so it's so important that we keep giving girls that confidence throughout their childhood and not just, as adults or as very, very small people. Oh, good. I'm enjoying this greatly. Abigail, let's start with you this time. What does writing feel like for you, and has it changed since it's become your profession? It's a big question, I
know. Well, I suppose writing is kind of almost like a form of therapy, I think, and like journaling, because I always seem to write about things that are happening in my life or things that I have experienced. And even when I'm writing fiction and I'm thinking, okay, now I'm going to write something I can do anything I like, doesn't have to be real, and somehow it always ends up going back to actual real life and really specific things that happened when I was 9 on the 28th of September or something like that. So yeah, I still love writing as much as I did when I was a child, I think. Probably more, actually. And since I was a child, I always loved combining the writing with the illustration. And on my schoolwork, even if it was just an essay, I'd be hand designing titles and drawing little pictures around it. And I thought it was too boring to hand in just loads of words, and also it helped break up the page and made it easier to digest. But I remember at one point my mum got concerned because I was staying up really late working, and she complained to the school, and she was told that I didn't have all this homework, I was just making it for myself, and I should just focus on the content and not the presentation and stop drawing but I didn't listen. And then I was pleased I didn't listen. And I thought, if I had listened to the people who told me how I should be writing or how I should be drawing or how I should be creating when I was younger, then I wouldn't have written my book, and I wouldn't have done lots of things that I have done.
Wait, that's perfect.
What does writing feel like for you? How's it changed? Well,
if it hasn't, that's fine too.
Well, I suppose it has changed. I mean, I started my writing career as writing social media campaigns for TV shows and music acts and stuff like that. So I'd have to write in different styles and for different purposes and different creative things. And I still do it. I think I've done that about 12 or more years now. So I do it part-time now, and it used to be full-time. But yeah, I suppose I can mold my writing to different things, like for that side of my career. But when I'm writing for me, I don't try to be anything else. It always feels like it's coming from my brain, and the words always look like it's my thought patterns and stuff, because it goes all over the place. And sometimes I have to really, well, I have been told sometimes I need to edit, even keep the rambles, but edit them a bit, because there's word counts and stuff, page limits. But yeah, I don't know how to conclude my answers. But I think that might have been the end of it.
That's beautiful.
You just conclude everyone with ta-da. Just finish it with ta-da. I think that's it.
Yeah,
I'll clap myself.
Do you find actually, it's funny, I just thought of it while you were saying that. Are you a particular fan of M dashes? Because my writing is literally just full of like M dash, M dash, M dash, M dash.
Yeah. And they're always being removed and replaced with something else. I prefer it to a.
So do I. I just discovered
commas can be overused.
So Louise.
But they mean something different. So I'm just saying that the M dashes and the like for me, like a comma is just for some reason it's a different feeling. As you're pretty saying, a comma for some reason is like almost different grammar. It's not our grammar then. Yeah. It's not neurodiverse grammar because that I maybe don't want a comma. I want to like continue it, but be like, oh, this is an extension, but not have a comma.
Yeah. And a colon feels too serious.
Yeah,
the M dash is
It's super important. It's literally like, oh, here's this thought, but wait a second, here's this connecting thought, but actually then maybe I'll go back to my other one, and then it works perfectly in my opinion.
So then anyone in the publish industry listening to us, this is how to represent the neurodivergent writers. M dash everything.
Listen up, publishing industry.
And footnotes for the thoughts that
for the afterthought.
Louise, what does writing, and we were talking a little bit before we started recording about deadlines, what does writing feel like for you, and has it changed at all since?
I think writing for me, I mean, I totally agree with Abigail, like it is kind of a bit therapeutic, like it's the one time you'll see me sat still. It's like if I'm writing, I sort of go into a trance. It's like something I can really like, just get myself locked into. So it's something that's really, really, really works for me as a thing, because it just allows my brain to wander off and do various things, and and I like the diversity of like 1 minute I'm doing social media posts, the next minute I'm doing this, the next minute I'm doing that, but I have to not get distracted because there's too many things, and then I get overwhelmed with all the things, and then I panic, and then I go quiet on Twitter for a week because I don't know what to say to anyone. Then I panic that I'm not talking to anyone. It's just a spiral of panic I live in. But no, I find that, how has it changed? I think the hardest thing, sorry, I put probably another question you could ask later, but the hardest thing for me is sitting down and structuring myself. That's sometimes the hardest thing. And if I get given like long deadlines, you've lost me. Your best work comes from me in a panic and a last minute, and just if someone said to me, write a book, you've got a week to do it, I would be like, so you want it in for tomorrow then? I have to tell myself that. I have to tell myself there's no time, because otherwise my brain just, I go into overthinking mode. And I was just writing actually a little picture book thing before we came on about someone just overthinking, because I'm like just channeling that sort of like, what's going on in my brain? How can I put that onto paper? And I don't know about you guys, but I mean, I'm guessing for Abigail, it's definitely because she's an illustrator. My doodles, I love doodling, but I'm not as talented as Abigail. But, I'm a very visual thinker. So before any of my books are actually written, I have a whole visual concept in my head, and that's the hardest thing. So I actually send doodles now. So the book I've been working on now, I just send doodles. I know they're not going to be involved in the book, but I'm like, just so I can explain what's going on in my head, because I feel like I have to explain what's going on, because I worry that people won't get the visual journey that I'm going on. So sometimes it's hard for me because I come up with titles, I come up with a whole visual thing, and I'm sat there going, okay, now words. That's the hardest thing for me, I think. But I get there. It just takes time for the words to come, because I have it, if I could play a video on my brain, everyone would be like, wow, this is amazing. I'm sure they would. I hope they would. I think it is. But I can never get that, getting that visual thing was always difficult for me to...
No, it's really funny you say that, because I mentioned with the last panel I did with Emily and Elle I was doing with it. there's a unique joy in having the images in your head and then finding the right words to describe them. It's like such a wonderful, satisfactory thing when that actually happens. It's like a puzzle piece coming together. So I do know that.
And I do, Abigail, as you say, the waffling on thing. I've done books before, and like I sent one off, and we can talk about later. But I would waffle on. I'm like, you have to keep the waffle on, because that actually describes the experience of what's going on. Like, if you take out the waffle, then it's just a story, but you don't get the constant build up of thoughts and the verbal vomit that actually I'm living through, or someone with ADHD maybe is doing. So it's so difficult sometimes. It's trying to explain to people, like, they're like, cut down the words, and I'm like, yeah, but if you cut down the words, then you miss the point of just sort of saying, yeah,
totally,
exactly, because then it's representing the neurodivergent brain in the way it's written. And it's important to keep in.
You kind of already touched on it, but I'll start with you again, Louise. What effect do you think, if any, being neurodivergent has had on your writing or your career, however you want to interpret that?
I mean, you could say in a way, I mean, that's what kind of opened the door for me. I was, I that was kind of something that I could bring in. It was a lucky of time in the industry where the doors were opening for underrepresented writers, I think. And I don't know how anyone else feels, but maybe right time, right place, turning up with something, and being able to speak from lived experience, because with Just Like Me, it's not just the neurological differences and disabilities. There's lots of physical differences and disabilities as well that we've had within my family, and it's not just my nuclear family. It's my parents. We've it's something I've lived through quite a lot, and we have lots of experience together with. So I do think that being for our own voice is something which is up for debate at the moment, but having that own voice was important at the time, and sort of just lucky that people were looking finally to have those voices represented, and sort of give people a space with our because it is a unique perspective, and I'm sure that if the three of us wrote down a book of what we wanted to represent as ADHD, there will be three completely different books, because all three of us will be, there's no one thing. And people beforehand writing books, they were taking, this is a stereotype that people will recognize, and I'll just present it this way. And I think we're just lucky that I say lucky, maybe you should have been there way beforehand, but I'm grateful that it was right place, right time, and at least we have the opportunity now to unravel a lot of that.
Yeah, that's very wise. Thank you.
Sorry.
Do not apologise. You're both doing amazingly, and it's fascinating stuff. So please, stop apologising. You're doing brilliantly. Abigail, how about you? Do I need to repeat the question? I can't remember what it was now. It was
Well, I've got it on a screen,
fantastic.
so I remember what it was. Well, I suppose since I've always been neurodivergent, even though I didn't know I was until recently, it's hard to know what writing would be like if I wasn't, because it wouldn't be me. But but I know the way I write mirrors how my brain works, and also it did give me it. Yeah, the autism gave me a way in as well, because in that way, and also I the writing. Oh yeah, my writing style. So mirrors my thinking style. So jumps around all over the place, and the writing style and the way I've structured a different sort of normal seems to have been something that's struck a chord with other neurodivergent people. So like people have said about how it's like looking into their own brain in reading it, like how things were arranged. And I've had parents of children with ADHD and dyslexia telling me that this is the first book their child's managed to read cover to cover in a long time. And I think, being neurodivergent and writing as a neurodivergent person has What's the question?
No, you're. It's
this is just
about what effects it had on your writing, which is exactly what you've answered.
Yeah, that's what I'm answering. Yeah, and so I like to space out the writing with the drawings, and arrange the pages in a way that I would find easy to read. Like, so I don't like reading blocks of text that look serious, and yeah. So I suppose, yeah, and even like my fiction book is also going to be illustrated and in a sort of style that's not just reading it cover to cover. Well, you will read it cover to cover. I mean, you could read it backwards if you want, but that's not going to be very helpful.
We could try it.
Anyway,
give it a go. Amazing.
Yeah,
Thank you.
maybe.
Do you mind if I ask you, actually, you guys, and you don't have to answer this, but I'm curious, and Louise, you did touch on it before we recorded. As adults, what was it that made you seek a diagnosis? Was it something, or I know Louise said you didn't so much seek it, did you? It was kind of mentioned to you.
It's just, Mrs. Gooding, have you considered? Anyways, I said that earlier. So Abigail, go.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So, I decided to give up drinking alcohol, to deal with anxiety and hangovers, and because I was thinking, even though I wasn't drinking, I don't know how much was I drinking? Probably 3 or 4 times a week or something. In sometimes, but I'd always think that I was hungover, even if I hadn't drunk for 5 days or a week or something. And I'd think, oh, I must be really sensitive to alcohol. So I thought I'll stop drinking and then see if I can be normal. normal. So I did, and at first that it made the anxiety better. But then I started noticing things that I thought were to do with hangovers were still there, like the overwhelm of being in a restaurant, trying to deal with back and forth voices and like lights and stuff, and background noise, and being on a train in the morning on the way to work, and the feelings were still there. And I knew a couple of my friends were diagnosed as autistic in their 30s, and I thought, we're quite similar actually. So I started researching autism, and more specifically, autism in girls. And then I found the checklist that a lot of people have found, Samantha Craft's unofficial checklist of autism in girls. And I know that, like, now, I mean, we shouldn't be just saying boy and girl in a binary way, but at the time, this checklist was something that was quite, quite eye-opening to a lot of people who weren't the typical white male who likes trains and timetables and numbers. And yeah, so then I thought, actually, this is such a long story. Wow,
this is great.
Where am I in the story? Anyway, so I went to the doctor, wrote a 40-page letter. Well, that was at one part of the process. And a year and a half later, I got the diagnosis after lots of things. But the answer to the question, well, that was
a
the
perfect answer to the question. And it's just really interesting to hear different people's experiences, because it's a very different thing.
Also, yeah, there were, like, my brother, when I was a child, once I said something ridiculous, I think. I don't know what I said, but my brother said to my mum, by the way, Abby's autistic. And then my mum said, oh, no, she's not. Stop being stupid. She's just got the creative gene. She's just a bit different. And I thought he was just insulting me. Well, he was trying to, but he didn't know anything about autism. But turns out he was psychic, and some other people thought about autism, but I just thought they were being rude to me because I didn't know anything about autism, because it was misunderstood. And now I'm proud to be autistic. Why do I sound drunk?
You don't sound drunk. It is. I absolutely couldn't agree more. So the next question, I'm concerned I phrased it wrong, so do forgive me if I have. But have you ever been concerned that treatment, so for example, the traditional medication for ADHD, would have an adverse effect on your writing or your creativity? Louise, do you want to go?
So I did actually try Ritalin once. I just didn't particularly like how
Hmm.
I felt on it. Anyways, I've kind of, I think it's again maybe it's just because I'm an adult. I bumbled along for so long
Mm.
without it. I'm almost like a bit almost scared to try it because I don't know what to expect, and I do worry because I like the way my brain works. I like that it fires off in all sorts of directions, and I've learned to kind of put coping mechanisms in place. They're not always the best, I'm sure. If my family overheard, they'd be like, she's saying. um, but I think they're coping mechanisms. But so I do my own thing, but I'm not adverse. I mean, this is the big thing, and I think it's so important just to make clear here. I'm not adverse to medication if it's something that works for you. I think many people have to try different ways. That they feel comfortable. So she said, but my youngest, she tries it, and it's always something we do together, and it's something I think is a really important thing that whatever decision, whether you're writing and you find out later or whatever you're doing with your career, it's not you have to. I don't like people feeling you have to. It's like, oh, you've got this. There's so many different ways to kind of work with who you are. And I for some reason I always worry that I'm an overly anxious person, so I'm like, what if I take it and something happens, or what happens if I take it and I get rid of all this. So I think I've overthought my way out of trying too much medication. But yeah, at the moment it works, and at the moment I'm just I'm sure there are days when it would be great to feel like, I don't know what it'd be like, but to feel I've got all my thoughts together. I don't know, but maybe I'll try it one day, but it's not something I found that writing in itself, because it's kind of like a meditative thing, like it's almost like a meditation for me. It's calm, and I always listen to classical music. For some reason, that's actually, even just adding writing into my world has allowed my brain some sort of outlet and some calm. So I'm kind of, that's working for the moment. But yeah, I just want to make sure everyone's clear that I'm not anti it. Do what works for you. It just hasn't been something I've done.
Thank you. That's
yet.
really helpful. And Abigail, what about you?
Well, like in the past, I've always been very much like, I would prefer to do things naturally, and like I do Reiki healing, and I used to have homeopathy, and but I when I started struggling quite a lot with managing everything I've had to do, I've been getting more overwhelmed with deadlines and the different jobs and keeping up with life and having a house. Well, not having a house, renting one. With a wait, no, stay on the topic.
This is great.
You'd never get. Okay, wait, no. Okay. all of the thoughts are sort of there, like swimming around, which is weird because I have taken ADHD medication today, and not that long ago actually. But basically, I was very excited to try ADHD medication, and I'm currently on the what is called the titration process, where they introduce medication like week by week, and they up the dose, and the psychiatrist monitors like side effects and stuff. And I'm not sure I'm going to continue it after the period, because I feel like I'm not concerned about the creativity side of things, but I feel like for me, the medication is supposed to be long release, so it's supposed to last for 12 hours. But for me, it tends to wear off quite quickly. So, and then I get side effects of like like more anxiety and like shakiness and stuff. And I know it's common to have like while your body's adjusting to it. And I was told that by the third week it should start to improve. But yeah, I feel like maybe for me the side effects are affecting the fact being able to focus, because I'm now focused on the side effects. And I think because I'm autistic and like my nervous system is quite sensitive to things, I'm noticing the effects of the medication more than maybe I would be if I just had ADHD. I don't know. I'm not an expert. I'm not a professional, but this is just my experience. So I'm currently not sure about medication, but I have used it sometimes and thought, yeah, this has been really helpful, and I'd be able to just sit and focus on something and not get distracted. And I even managed to make a meal the other day without getting flustered, which has probably never
Well done.
happened in my life. But it's swings and roundabouts, as they say, and yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. That is where I was coming. I put this question specifically because, coming from someone who is keen to, I think, perhaps potentially look at that to help with other areas of my life, you kind of worry where, what other kinds of effects it's got. So it's really interesting to hear both of your experiences. Thank you very much. Abigail, let's start with you for this one. What do you find particularly challenging about this industry? What would you like to see change?
Well, the thing is, I've been really lucky in my experience of the industry so far, and I've been trying to think of problems and stuff, but I feel like I've been so looked after so well by United Agents and Puffin, and they're both really aware of my autism and are sensitive to my needs and comfort levels. And I'm just really grateful that I've had such a positive experience in the industry so far. But I mean, I suppose in general, like prioritizing things and the focusing, but it's something that's just part of all of life, not just the industry. But I think specifically industry, like school, I suppose school events, because like in-person events I find very difficult because you've got the environment to contend with, the sensory stuff. They're trying to remember what to say, getting distracted, having to travel to them, and I think I find a lot easier to do online things. And when COVID was happening, everything was online, and that was just how it was. But now, as things are changing, and there are like it's tricky because I like the ADHD side of me, or well, it's like swinging between two extremes. Like I want to be able to meet people um and talk to the children and like be in an active environment, but at the same time I get overwhelmed by it, and then my mind can go blank, and then it will take ages to recover from doing something real life. So I think I think. What do I think? I suppose maybe schools. It would be good for online things to still be an option rather than it feel like, because I know some schools don't really like it if you ask to do online instead of in person, and I can understand why. But I think for being inclusive and for yeah. My sentences don't really have the right structure.
They make perfect sense. They make perfect sense. And funnily enough, it's very similar to what was said by Emily and Elle as well, that kind of online world makes it so much more accessible for neurodivergent writers in a way that, perhaps normally it's not been possible. Louise, what about you?
See, this is where I'm a bit special because I feed off energy. Again, this is my type of ADHD. Is I feed off like positive reinforcement. I am literally like a moth to a flame if there's anything that's high energy. And I mean, I completely burn out for days afterwards because I overwhelm myself. But I before I was writing, actually did a stint in children's entertainment and absolutely loved that. I can be in front of kids. The only thing I get worried about, like for me, with the whole the online thing, so many people are like, oh, you can pre-record us some videos. I can't do that. I cannot pre-record anything. I mean, everyone says, oh, it takes us so long. Like, I will be on day 3 of trying to record a 5-minute thing, and I will overthink it, and I will panic, and I will stress, and then I will go, that's it, I can't do anything. I mean, I was reading for a book for someone the other day, and I'm like, no words could come. I just could not do anything online with my face. Videos, interaction, great. School visits where there's a class there, I do get a bit awkward as well, because I'm like, I can't see everyone's face. I don't know if they're enjoying it. I don't know. And then I panic, and I start to spiral off in this anxiety filled, what if no one's really enjoying it? Because I can't feed or read or, like whatever it is. So I work really well. But again, I have to have visual aids. I can't be expected to remember a monologue. Never put me on like a TED talk and ask me to talk about something ever, because my brain just goes, and I just will stand there and go, okay, I ate some nice soup today, and it would go off like, somewhere else, not at all relevant. So I did a school talk in Switzerland. I did my first one in person. I was very excited by it. And it was great because I was speaking to like 4 to 5 year olds up into like 14, 15 year olds. I literally did the full stretch, and I was like, I can make this work. I'll be fine. And I managed to do the different age groups. And my energy was, I loved that because I could work with the kids. I could talk about things. I made sure I had loads of slides. So if I didn't go off track, and I knew what I was talking about. But I had to have basically everything I wanted to say on the screen just to remind me, because I had this, it was terrible. It's not terrible. Helen, who's is it Wonderland Books, I'm sure I'll get it right. Nope, Through the Wardrobe. Okay, sorry, I'm terrible. Anyways, one of the lovely authors with the rainbow hair, Helen. I love her. She's amazing. I was brought in for a book chat online. Again, this was great for the inclusivity of like being able to invite me from Switzerland to talk to her book club. And there was one point where, we were talking, and I didn't have my book to hand. I'm like, literally, if like people ask me questions, I'm like, okay, because it goes out of my head. I'm completely lost because you've asked me a random question. I wasn't prepared for it. And she asked me something about Greta Thunberg, or I mentioned something. And I literally was like, I've got no idea. And I did. I was like trying to reach for my book, but trying to also Google the answer because I should have known this. And then I was like, oh, this is the thing. And then I read, and then I got hold of my book and read the next line of my book and the answer. I was like, this is what I'm like. My brain just does not focus. That's the problem. So I love the inclusivity of having online events. So I get to the point here. But for me, I find it, I don't work well. For me, it was so difficult. Everyone's like, do this, do that. I'm like, I can't do that. Give me an interview, have someone feed me questions. I can do that because I can do a bit of to and froing, but sitting by myself, there's nothing comes. It's as if like there's just the brain fog comes in. I forget everything. What I write, I'm a writer. Oh yeah, did I write something? It's as if like it's all of it's gone. So that's the only thing I found really challenging. Just that sort of like, oh, you can do this, and you're like, yeah, maybe. Oh, thank you. And I did fail. I have to say there's not very many videos you can find of me anywhere, because
obviously you've gone round and deleted all of them.
And I should do. Yeah, it took I think one of them I did it took me 5 days to try and do a video that a bookshop in somewhere else in the world wanted me to do. And 5 days I tried to do a video, and then I cried and I stressed, and I was like, you know what, I don't have to do that. It's fine. I need to be kind to myself. It's okay to say, do you know what, this is just not how I work, but I'll happily do a video. I'll happily do something else. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing, I think, for the challenging thing. And as you've probably got different answers from us all, or maybe similar ones, it's actually speak to us as neurodivergent authors. There's no handbook for us. I'm sorry, everybody. There's no handbook for how to deal. Like if you've worked with Elle, if you've worked with Abby, if you've worked with you, we're all going to need different things. We're all going to have our different things that we can cope with. It's not as easy as saying, oh, we just need to be wary because this person has ADHD, or this person has that, or they are autistic, or whatever. It's nothing to do with that. It's who is this person? How do they work? And that's where I think it's very difficult maybe for the industry, because in other areas, maybe there is a handbook of like, okay, well, this is kind of what we want to do and how to help this group of people. And this is how we work this group of people. But I don't know, for us, we're just like, there's just so much diversity in our brains that it's, I think people, that's what the things, maybe the challenge.
Yeah.
Of how do you make it accessible for all of us, because we'll all need different things.
That's a really good point, actually. There is no one size fits all with this, is there? And it's about having those conversations and taking that time. And also, I feel like something that has made my life easier before I even realized that I was neurodivergent is knowing what works for me and what doesn't, and having the confidence to say, this is how I process information. At the time, like when I was saying things like, I need you to give me time to go away and process it, I really should have realized. But you can't ask me questions straight up. I will have to go away and think about it and formulate my answer and then come back and tell you. But don't expect a question from me answered straight away. It's not going to happen. The more you learn about yourself like that, and the more people ask you, that's how you kind of get those working relationships in that sweet spot, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really.
Exactly.
Awesome. Thank you. Where were we? Let's have a look. This is kind of moving on from it a little bit. Louise, do you feel like this industry offers you the chance to be authentically yourself, or are there still barriers?
Okay, this is where I'm going to be difficult. Sometimes. I'm going to go there. Sometimes. I still sometimes feel that different areas, maybe I'll just talk from the ADHD perspective here. I still feel that ADHD, even though they want to break some of the stereotypes, they're still holding on to like, well, maybe this comes across as too organized and too much like this for someone with ADHD. And I have heard phrases. I have heard phrases like that said. This is going to be very awkward. It's too like this for what we're looking for. It's too like that, maybe. And I totally get it. People have their own styles. They need to do their own thing. But I think it's just as I go back to like earlier. There's no one way. If you're going to have one book with an ADHD character, one book with an autistic character, one book with characters with Tourette's, any neurodiversity at all, it's one book. That's where I have, and I think it's so important that all sides are considered, because I, appreciate, and it's again that not binary. It's not ADHD. It's probably ADHD with elements of anxiety or depression or with other mental health issues, or difficulties. And I think this is the difficulty sometimes when you try and present it. And it maybe I worry like, is it okay to be authentically me and represent my side of it? Because I'm not a stereotypical ADHD. I'm a female, and I'm represent more as the typical boys side, but I'm not at all. But it's just that whole like, I think that's where I still want to try and break in and say, look, hey, this is, my daughter's the same, like this side needs to be represented, and it's going to be difficult, and it does mean that we're going to be allowed, but they're going to be really big characters, and they're probably not going to be what you expect, but they need to be there, because there will be a kid like I was at school going, oh my goodness, there's some, I want that. And I think it's difficult that, as I said, going back to that point I made earlier of we're all different. I think publishers have to be aware when they want the authentic representation that they are aware of what that means, and they allow us all to like represent everything. It's such a big conversation. I will stop there because it's I've got like, I could talk about that forever. But
yeah. You're right, it could be endless. It's such a big thing. Abigail, how about you? Do you feel that you can be authentically yourself, or are there things that you would do differently?
Yeah, I think in the writing and editing and the publishing process, I've been able to be myself. Yes, and I suppose that's I came into it with autism being the main thing of my book, so I was able to immediately tell people what I needed, and not try to be someone who is not autistic. Like I suppose it's the first time I haven't had to mask like throughout school and work. I've always been trying hard to appear normal and to force myself to do things that I would find difficult because that's what everyone else is doing, and because I need to do a job and sit at a computer and like follow the normal life things. But since getting into the publishing part of things, it's been the first time I've been actually able to be myself, because that's what my book is about, me. um, and but I do find, I suppose, like as I was saying with the promoting side of things, well, mainly like I really enjoy the live events I've done. Uh, it's the school ones that worry me. I haven't even done any yet, and that's why. But because it would be unpredictable, and it's not like when it's a like an adult panel and there's an audience and roughly what people are going to ask you, and the structure. Anything could happen when children are involved, and I suppose that's worrying. But I don't want people to think that I don't want to do a school visit. This is not what I'm working up to it. I'm going to have to do some practicing. Anyway,
I think that's with all of us. I mean, that worrying, I just want to get what you're saying there, Abigail. Like, even like saying stuff, you do worry. You're like, it's not that I'm not grateful. I appreciate everything. I appreciate every feedback.
Yeah.
But it's so difficult. Even I think, I don't know how you feel, but just to even sometimes say, I feel uncomfortable. Because also, I don't know about you, but that whole we've spent so long in our life bending to other people, or masking that, or hiding that, or being okay, sorry, or sorry to mention. I mean, I still do. I mean, how many times have I apologized for talking too much? I mean, it's literally part of who I am. But
sorry, used to be my catchphrase.
And I still do it, and I still worry about butting in or talking too much or talking over people. And there's that whole why are we still it's still that need to say sorry and go, I can't do that, or are they not, and then you worry, are they not going to want us as an author because we're maybe we don't have boundaries yet, but we need to put boundaries in, or we'll need to change our boundaries as things develop. And I think there is a bit of anxiety that goes along with this journey for us individually, about, because we're learning, it's a whole new industry for us, so we have to learn what we can and can't do, and almost not be sorry, but also sorry, but not sorry, but
totally. You're totally right. And it's those, it's the kind of replaying of every conversation afterwards, isn't it? And being like, oh wait, I obviously did too much of that, and I did too much of this, and I said,
Oh, I'll panic about this phone call for I'll panic about this for a week, about what did I say, and then I'll listen to it, and then I'll cringe the whole way through and go, oh my goodness, did I say that?
I'm just going to say blanket now. You're doing a great job, and you've not done anything wrong, and it's brilliant. So if that helps in any way. Okay, lovely. So, Abby, how do you deal with overwhelm or burnout as a published author? Because as we know, it's not just about writing the book, is it? It's about some of the other stuff that comes with it, like you've said.
Lots of stuff, and it's I suppose balancing it with a job and life and different. There's a lot at once often, and often I don't realize I'm in burnout until it's over, and then I'm like, oh yeah, that's what that was. And and I suppose the overwhelm has been quite constant state for me since I was a child, because I was always putting pressure on myself to do too much and to do more and to try and be better, and the perfectionism, which is a common thing with autism and ADHD. So I do push myself too far sometimes, but these days I try to be kind to myself and allow myself to rest if I need to, without feeling guilty, and try to say, look, I don't need to feel guilty for not doing something the whole time. And if I need to rest, then it's going to make the work better when I do it. And I have to, I've been learning how to say no and alternatives, and be honest about when deadlines don't feel manageable, rather than trying to just push through and then ruin myself. So yeah, I was trying to get a balance in the schedule stuff, and then allowing rest time. And
yeah, that's a really good point. Like, you know, I think it's very easy to, if you say yes to everything and trying to balance all of that stuff and not allow yourself that time to take that time for you, then it could result very, very much in burnout. Louise, how about you?
Well, I mean, I'm probably the same, sort of constantly privately dealing with that in the background. Occasionally, so we're really lucky that last year we did have like a little group like that we could talk about, like, the publishing journey sort of, last year as such. And I would occasionally come in and be like, sorry guys, I just had to ignore you all for a bit, or I feel like I've not interacted as much because I'm dealing with other things, or you'd step away from things. I mean, it's so difficult. I don't know about anyone else, but like when you're feeling overwhelmed, but you also have to keep up these relationships, but you have to also build new relationships, but then you have to talk to people, but actually I can't talk to people anymore because I'm just done. But then I panic that I'm not taking advantage of things. I mean, I do have quite a lot of ups and downs, and I'm quite open about, like, recently I was put on anti-anxiety medication again because I was just, between work world and life in general, I wasn't coping. And it's nothing necessarily the publishing side. Sometimes we're just overwhelmed, anxious people because of life, and then we have to continue on presenting and doing everything else as well. But for me, the biggest thing is I just try and talk about it now, and I sort of say to people, if I rock in, as I said, like early, I get in early, or I rock in late, and I'm just like, I'm unapologetically me now, and that's kind of helped. If I'm just not feeling it, I now give myself the allowance to say, look, hey, you don't need to do this. But it's still hard to say to step away. I still panic. I spent ages panicking that I stepped away and I've missed an opportunity and I've upset someone. But yeah, how do I deal with it? I don't know if I am dealing with it. Let's be honest. I mean, am I dealing with it? I don't know. Is that even an answerable question? How do I deal with it? Not very well.
Unapologetically you, though. I like that.
with wine and chocolate and too much cake. That's how I deal with it.
That's my diet, to be completely honest, at like 24 hours a day. So not wine 24 hours a day, I promise. Guys, don't. So Louise, I'll ask you again. Do you feel more of a pressure to be more of an example or a role model, or is this something that you feel particularly passionate about anyway?
I'm already, as I said, I think, I mean, going back to that unapologetically me thing, I mean, I've gone into talks, and like I said, when I messed up, speaking to that group of kids, like I basically just went and I just had to read my own book that I had written or remember what I'd written, and it had just totally gone out of my head. And I was just like, there we go, there's a live action ADHD moment, and I just play with it now. And I'm literally like, okay, this is just me, and it's great. And I'm very upfront when I speak to kids or people and say, look, I'm probably going to forget something. I'm probably going to muddle along. I'm probably going to go off at a tangent. Feel free to shout out and say, get back to the subject. And I just now, I can almost take the mickey out of myself, but I allow children to feel comfortable and safe knowing that I'm comfortable and safe. And, I talk a bit about how I felt different growing up and how it was sometimes difficult. And because the biggest thing, obviously, growing up when I did, even teachers weren't necessarily overly aware of it, and I always make a point to the kids, if I talk to anyone, if I get to talk to any of them, that, they're kind of lucky that they're growing up in a wonderful place where we have access now to these books. And, I mean, Abigail knows, I mean, I read her book and I went off so much about to so many people I was just for ages like, you have to get this book, you have to get this book, it's really good, it's really but and it was because it was so important, because I literally read it and I was like waving at my own children, look at this book, look at this book. And I think that's such an amazing time for kids to grow up and to know that they can feel represented, and not only that, there are now people in front of them who actually also represent that, and they, I grew up, I didn't know what I was going to be, I didn't know, I was just like, Louise is too much, Louise is too this, Louise is too that. And one of the talks I did, a little boy was like, I'm ADHD too, and it was the first time he'd said anything to his whole class, because he was just like, because the teacher's like, he's never said anything before. And that was the big thing of like, it's okay, and I'm going to be totally wacky and totally loud, and it's probably going to go off in a million tangents, but hey, stick with me, it's going to be a fun ride. And that's just, unapologetically me. And I think it allows kids to just, whether it's, whatever you're representing, whether you're a quiet person or, if you're, as Abigail, be like, oh my goodness, panic, help, or whatever, like, there's children talking to me, however you feel. I think kids need to still see that and see that, okay, this is good. I can relate. And this is, this shows that every door is open to me, no matter what I want to do. So, yeah,
that's
long
lovely.
answer.
Sorry, I've just heard.
Sorry. Not sorry.
No, do not be sorry. It is absolutely fascinating. Absolutely, guys, you might hear my kids screaming, so I'm very sorry about that. If you can, but hopefully the microphone does block it out. Abigail, same question to you.
Yeah. I really agree with everything you've said, Louise, and I think I need to be more like that. I haven't even done a school visit yet, but I think that is the way to go. And I sometimes do that in. Wait, I'm rambling. Forget about this bit. Don't bother including it. Next. Well, you could include. No. Wait. Okay. I'm holding
unapologetically
this.
You.
Unapologetically
Oh yeah,
you.
Exactly. Calming rock. Okay. Oh yeah. So when my book first came out, I had a bit of a moment where I suddenly panicked about it and thought, I really hope I've said everything in the best way and that the book will actually help people in the way I wanted it to. And I was suddenly very conscious of the wording, even though it had been through sensitivity readers like Louise. Thank you so much for your help, which was brilliant and so needed. And yeah, I was very conscious of what I'd written and whether I'd exposed too much or whether I hadn't said enough, and hoping I said the right things and that people could relate to it. And I was obsessively checking the Amazon and Goodreads reviews and Googling my name in case I'd made any mistakes. But I think when you are writing for children and you're writing about real life and real experiences and something that is not as understood as it should be, and you're bringing new thoughts into people's heads, I think there is the feeling of not wanting to be a role model, but wanting to do it right. And I do, like, I'm a lot more conscious of how I am online, and it can, all of my answers don't end on a sentence, but they do have sentences in the middle of them,
and they are perfect as they are. So thank you so much. We're gonna got one more question for the both of you, just to kind of end our chat today. If you could, Abigail, I'll start with you. If you could offer one piece of advice to either yourself starting out or any young neurodivergent authors, not necessarily young, any neurodivergent authors who are watching and starting out, what would that piece of advice be?
Stay true to yourself and your writing style and the way you want to write, what you want to write about. Don't try to mold yourself into what you think the industry or the world wants to read or see, because everyone's writing is unique and everyone's experience is unique, and these stories are what's important. And yeah, and like I said, if I'd listened to the teachers who told me not to write in long rambly sentences as they used to, they said I used to forget what I was saying by the end of my sentences, but I carried on. And then they said, don't draw in a cartoony style, you're better when you're drawing pieces of fruit. I didn't want to draw pieces of fruit. I didn't want to draw a boot, so I left the art lesson and I didn't go back. But yeah, I wouldn't have written my book in the style if I'd taken the feedback from teachers. And instead, I've kind of used the feedback as to spur me on. And yeah, so you don't need to write like anyone else. Write in a way that feels right for you.
That's beautiful.
And
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's really.
I can't follow that. Sorry.
Can you try? or do you not?
Basically, everything Abigail said. I mean, that's the thing. And the only thing is, as well, like, to give myself a break. Like, you know, I think, I don't know about anyone else, but like, I think as writers as general, like the anxiety you feel when you send something on sub or to your agent, I mean, for me it's always very heightened, and if I don't get a reply within 24 hours, I assume everyone hates me and that's the end. And you know, because I'm just a chronic overthinker, and I'm always said, you know, as I said earlier, it's that living ridiculous need to kind of have that positive, like, you're doing okay. It's so I know I'm someone who tends to need that, and I you know, I have to give myself a break, you know, and I say this to anyone who's going into it. I think if you're someone like that, like me, you have to kind of learn to breathe a little bit, because you'll wear yourself out. You'll get into such bad spirals of really, like, you're thinking you can't, or thinking you're not worth, you know, bothering about, or maybe someone doesn't appreciate what you have to give. There's so much of that, and you know, just basically tell your brain to go away and be quiet, and know that this industry is slow as anything. You know, that's the thing. You know, I'm a fast-paced thinker, and you know, as much as I again say we all have to, you know, accept that we're all different and that's how we all are, I have to understand that the publishing industry as a whole is its own different entity as well, and it's very slow, and it doesn't necessarily work hand in hand with people and my brains. But you know, again, I just have to give it a bit of a breath, if that makes sense. That's a big advice for myself again, and for anyone who's like that, who goes, oh, I'm worried about it because I think about things. You know, you have to learn to step away and know what you're doing has worth. It will find its place somewhere with the right people. It just takes time, and that's fine. And it's the same with everything. It's like a self-discovery. Allow yourself to just know that whatever you're putting out there is great, and it's different, and it's unique. And it's, you know, for me, I actually write really weird and quirky things. I've not put any of that out there yet. One day I hope I can be my weird and quirky self to show you my weird interests.
Yes, please.
But you know, that's, you know, and I would like to do that, and I think that's okay. And I have to understand that my journey is here for now, there for later. It's fine. Just breathe. It's, you know, I'm still young. We're all still young. We can all hopefully be doing this still in many years to come. And it's a process. We're not going to change everything overnight, are we? Sadly.
No, and you know, that's the whole burden for you to try and change everything. Like you say, focus on what you can do and give yourself a break. And Louise and Abigail, thank you so much for coming. This hour has absolutely sped by. I've loved chatting to you both. Please do come back and visit us again.
Thanks. Yay. Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Farewell.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.